Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Steadfast and Lower program. We're talking with State Representative Brian Harrison, who represents House District 10 in the Texas State House, and State Representative-elect, who just won his primary race to represent District 65, which is the Flower Mound area up into Denton. State Representative Harrison, one of the things that people always say is that, well, it's nothing wrong with power sharing with the other side, but yet I don't see that happening in California. I don't see that happening in New York, where we have, these huge majorities of the Democrats. Why do you think it has been some mentality that Republicans here in the Texas State House believe that they need to power share with people that don't share their principles and values? And when you think about the escape that they made to Washington, D.C., there were no consequences for them. Many of them came back and still kept their committee chair positions.
Yeah, they sure did. The Democrats broke quorum. And why did they break quorum? Because they wanted to make it as easy as possible to cheat in our elections. And what were the consequences that Dade Phelan subjected them to when they returned? Absolutely nothing. And in fact, it wasn't just that he did not punish them. He didn't strip them of their committee chairmanships or do anything punitive to them for their dereliction of duty. What did he do the very next session? He reappointed them. Okay, he made some of these exact same people powerful committee chairmanships, gave them committee chairmanships, put them back in charge of the House. No, listen. People who I served with in the Trump administration, sometimes I don't even bother explaining to them what it's like in the Texas House, because when I do, they don't believe me. There is no Republican outside of the Austin swamp that has any comprehension of this level of betrayal. Can you imagine conservative Republicans being allowed to chair committees in the New York or California General Assemblies or legislatures? Can you imagine in the California General Assembly a George Bush or Donald Trump White House counsel being made the parliamentarian to enact conservative stuff and thwart their liberal agenda? These things would never happen. And what you ask why they do it, or why do they believe this power sharing arrangement has to happen? They don't believe that it has to happen. It's the excuse that they need because they can't tell their voters the truth. It's an excuse to disguise the fact that they are lying to the people that sent them to Austin because they believed they were voting for somebody who was going to stand up to the leftists. And in too many instances, Mitch talked about the searing of their conscience. They had made one capitulation after another capitulation to the point where they are now on the same team as the leftists that they were elected to fight. And it's past time for that to stop. And that's why we put out the contract with Texas to reform the Texas House and make it Republican once again and a body more consistent to adhering to the will of the voters.
And thank you so much for giving me that lead in, because I want to talk about this contract with Texas and about 12 or 13 different points that you have here, 12 different points that you have here. Mitch, let's discuss this with you. What does it mean for you to have been a part of this and also to have a plan, a battle plan going into this next legislative session with this contract with Texas? And to the listeners and the people in the audience, please go and Google it and pull it down. It's very easy. I think it's something we should all be behind and support.
Well, Colonel West, I think every good team needs to have some type of operating principles. For example, in the Army, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right?
Yep.
The United States has the Constitution. In Texas, we have a Constitution too. Our team, who decided to put this document together, got together and we decided what are the 12 orienting principles by which we have decided to live so that we can bring about order in favor of the legislation that these people who sent us to office to bring about can bring about. So the principles that are laid out in the contract with Texas are designed to bring reforms into the Texas House that will persist for generations. And really what it's intended to do is to point out to not only the people of Texas who have an opportunity to vote for us, but our colleagues, that we actually are principled. You can't get us on another day and get us to do something that's going to controvert these operating principles. Because what I'm seeing in the Texas House is, for a lot of people on the right and the left, Republican and Democrat, their orienting principles vary from day to day based upon how the wind blows or what circumstances they're under at the time, or who's in leadership at the time. This is no way to run a railroad, Colonel West. So we look at the Texas House, and there are a whole bunch of people in the middle who are really not discernible from one another politically. They can go wherever the wind suits them. What I've learned on the campaign trail is, for a lot of people, for a lot of voters who are thinking about who they're going to vote for, I would see them at the polls. I don't know. I may vote Republican today. I may vote Democrat tomorrow. And I personally have a very hard time believing that those people exist, but they do.
Yeah.
They don't just exist at the polls. They exist in the Texas House as well. If more voters knew and understood that, they'd be trying to identify their candidates better. One tool that we've given the voters to help identify their candidates better is the contract with Texas. And so if your representative or your candidate or your runoff candidate has signed it, you know this is a person of principle who has decided, I'm going to operate in this way that is going to manifest better legislation for my voters back home.
Representative Harrison, when I look at this, and it reminds me definitely of, the Newt Gingrich 1994 contract with America, where you had very specific items that everyone could understand, kind of different from Kevin McCarthy in a 150-page document. When you look at these 12 items, which ones, let's say top one or two, really are the emphasis for you?
Yeah, happy to answer that. It's a great question. And I'd like to say this. So I want to talk about the contract with Texas by pointing out one slight difference from the contract with America, which I do think is important. The contract with America was primarily a very discrete policy initiatives that needed to get passed, okay, that had been stymied for far too long. This is primarily, in a lot of respects, a procedural list of things, because what has happened in the Texas House, because of these structural deficiencies placed into it over the last 2 decades by fake Republican leadership teams that have co-opted the process to empower the radical Democrats. We have to first reform the processes in the Texas House so that the good conservative Republican priority policies can finally pass. And so what I mean by that is there's 12 points on there, but you can put them all kind of into 2 categories. One is to stop the minority party from effectively running the chamber and exercising full veto authority whenever they want. And number 2, decentralizing power back to the individual members, because what most Texans don't understand, even the ones that know who their state rep is, most of them effectively do not have a representative at all, because there's only one vote that's necessary in the Texas House right now to pass a bill, and that's the speaker's support. There's only one person you have to persuade to kill something, and that's the speaker. So we've got to take the power back from him, give it back to the members so that they can effectively be the voice for the 200,000 Texans that they represent. So I don't have favorites on the list. I like them all. People always ask me, well, which are the ones that are more important? Which ones are the ones you don't really care about? I care about them all. I'll tell you one of my personal favorites, the very last one on there, number 12, which is to prohibit the speaker from handing out political funds to members, because what he's doing is he's buying votes to kill Republican priorities. We've got to make the Texas House Republican again. We've got to get the individual members back in charge. And this whole notion that you can't be bipartisan if you don't put the other team in charge is laughable. It's facially absurd. You can be bipartisan without putting the other team in charge. Imagine if Speaker Johnson made Nancy Pelosi the chairman of Ways and Means, or imagine if Speaker Johnson made AOC chairman of Energy and Commerce. You served in Congress, Colonel West. You know full well there's not a single Republican in America that would tolerate that. But that is literally the nightmare that we live every day. I have joint authored bills with some of the most liberal Democrats in the Texas House when I saw an opportunity to advance liberty. You can be bipartisan, but being bipartisan doesn't mean you put the other team in charge and let them have full control of the chamber.
Yeah, what you guys are talking about here is what we would term up there in the United States House of Representatives restoring regular order. Because they have gotten so far away from that. So I'm glad you made that delineation between the procedural reforms as opposed to policy reforms. Mitch, we're going to go to you, State Representative-elect Little. The left is already screaming and yelling about this, that you radical Republicans, you crazy right-wingers are coming in and you're trying to disrupt things and you don't want to with the Democrats. How do you respond to those folks, Representative-elect Little?
Here's how I would respond, Colonel West. There's no more hiding. This is intended for the party that is in leadership right now. And the party that's in control of the Texas House is the Republican Party, okay? There should be no more hiding. So, Colonel West, you've met my son, Matthew. One of his
Yeah.
favorite places to go is when we go to Lockhart, Texas, on the way to see my grandmother. There's a barbecue restaurant called
Oh, gosh.
Kreitz's Market. Okay.
Yeah.
And at the entrance of Kreitz's Market, they have this claw game. You know, the claw game where you can move the joysticks and drop down. You get the stuffed animal out of it. Well, did you know that the claw game runs on software that tells the claw when to grab hard and when not to grab hard? The Texas state legislature runs the exact same way. And here's what I mean. So the Republicans who are in control of the Texas House have Democrats that they use who are either chairing committees, who are vice chairs on committees, to where if legislation doesn't make it through the committee, leadership in the Texas House just goes, oh, well, you didn't get it that time. Just put in another quarter next session, and I'm sure we'll get it that time. Whether it's casino gambling or it's choose the issue, school choice, just give us drop another $1.5 million into all our campaign accounts. And I know we're going to get it next time, guys. The claw game needs to be over. There should be no more hiding. The party that's in charge should be able to bring committees into order under its leadership and then pass conservative priorities before Democrat priorities make it to the floor. Is that radical?
It's so radical, right? So extreme.
No, it's pretty
order.
simple. It's pretty simple to me. Look, I just want to thank you, State Representative Brian Harrison and State Representative-elect Mitch Little. Where can people follow you, Representative Harrison, and stay in contact with you? And then the same for you, Representative-elect Little.
So I had never used Twitter in my life until I ran for the Texas House. I didn't even know how to tweet 2.5 years ago, but I have been reliably informed countless times that my Twitter feed makes the people in the capital of the state of Texas, the uniparty leadership of the Texas House, more angry than perhaps just about anything else. So I encourage people to go follow me there at Brian E. Harrison. At Brian E. Harrison, I tweet almost every day, exposing the truth, lifting the veil of the corruption in our state's capital, because I say all the time, transparency is kryptonite down there in the swamp. So the more voters know, the more informed they are, the better choices they can make. And they make great choices like sending people like Mitch Little and so many other real conservatives to the Texas House. And I'm so excited to serve with them.
And State Representative-elect Little, how can people follow you?
Yep, you can find me on X at Real Mitch Little. I'm not ticking people off quite as bad as Brian Harrison, but give it a minute. Just give it a minute or two. I'll
We'll get you there.
Or you can find me at MitchLittle4Texas.com, MitchLittleFORTexas.com. And I love this podcast. I love listening to it, love being on it, and you're doing amazing things. Thank you
so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, two gentlemen who are steadfast and loyal, State Representative Brian Harrison, State Representative-elect Mitch Little. Thank you so very much for joining us. And until next time, steadfast and loyal.
Before they burn it down.